Okay, welcome back to another episode of The Millennial Entrepreneur. My name's Sina, and I love following the journeys of other young entrepreneurs. And in this episode, I chat with Jemma Smith, the founder of the Education Hotel, a tutoring company providing tuition services to students all around the world. So we cover topics such as how Jemma decided to leave her job of a strategy consultant after hating it and building a business out of her passion of tutoring. We also cover how she started the business by herself to now having over 70 tutors on her books in the space of only a year. Also, we explore different learning styles and how the singular learning style notion is probably false. And so that brings me to this week's shout out. So in case you don't know, every week I'm giving a shout out to someone who's left a written review on Apple Podcasts as a way of saying thank you for all the support, basically. And so if you want to feature in the next week's episode in the form of a shout out, please do leave a written review on Apple Podcasts with your name, and I'll give you a shout out in the next episode. So this week, the shout out goes to NYC with a love emoji saying, fantastic, great interviewer, lets the guest talk and ask pertinent questions. Excellent podcast. Thank you so much for that written review. So nice to hear that you enjoy, and so nice to hear some feedback as well. And if you want to feature in next week's episode in the form of shout out, leave a written review on Apple Podcasts and I will read that out. So without further ado, let's get on with the episode. Okay, hey Jemma, how you doing?
Hi there. Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
How's your day? How's your day been?
Yeah, not too bad. So I start my day off teaching, and then for today it's mostly business work. So that's it's quite nice to shift into running the business for the next couple of days. Usually I split my week, and the start of my week is a lot of teaching, and the end of it is a lot of strategizing about how to get the business running.
So it's a lot of, at the end of the week, it's a lot of thinking about like new ideas, new sort of growth plans that you have in your mind
Yeah,
about
definitely.
where to go, basically.
Yeah, a lot of time thinking, and a lot of calls with team members, and all of those bits that take a little while to come together, but ultimately push what we do forwards.
Yeah, I mean, do you do any like tutoring yourself even nowadays? I mean, we'll get into your business a bit more. It is around tutoring,
Yep.
but just quite interested because I was saying before we start recording, I do a lot of tutoring part time as well. I do a lot of economics tutoring,
hmm
and yeah, just interested. Do you still do tutoring?
I do, yes. I really enjoy it. So I came at this business from being a private tutor. I've been a tutor for 9 years now. And whilst running the Education Hotel, which is my tuition agency, allows me to take some time back. I still love doing it. So I try and put most of my tuition Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and then I try and spend the rest of the week working on the Education Hotel. But yeah, it is something I still like to do. I still like to have a hand in, um, and I also do the reason that I really started. I run a kind of online tuition agency as well as some face to face normally, but myself I do quite a bit of what's called residential tuition. So I am one of those people that offer flies around the world tutoring. So that's always quite fun.
Wait, what? You fly around the world?
I do, yes.
What? How does that work?
So I started probably about 4 or 5 years ago as a residential tutor. That means that each holiday or half term, sometimes out of half term if they're homeschooled, I will go to a student wherever they are in the world, and will work with them intensively. I'll sometimes live with the family, or I'll stay at a hotel, and I'll meet with the student every day, and we will work on, well, whatever it is that they need to be preparing. But yeah, it is a bit of an unusual job, but that is often what my holidays are doing.
That is crazy. I didn't know that job even. I didn't even know that even happened. That's
Yeah,
that's that's crazy. Wait, so where do you go? Like, list some countries and some places that you've been to on this. What's it called? Residential tutoring.
residential tuition. So Dubai, Kenya, Hawaii, um, China. I've been to New Mexico, Milan, Cannes. It can be anywhere really. But all of the students that I go to see, they're all studying or looking to study in UK schools. So UK school or UK university, and they're often doing something like GCSEs or related to GCSEs. They might be doing some homeschool stuff, um, but ultimately their ultimate goal is a UK school or a UK university, or they're at UK school or university.
You should sign me up. I want to get in. I want to get involved. It sounds so good. It sounds like you can just, well, yeah, you can travel while also tutoring, which is fun as well. It's good to do.
Yeah,
That sounds so much fun.
it's really great. It's a you are always at work because you mostly live with the family, and so when I live with the family, I'm very much part of their family. So it does get tiring, but I do love doing. That's the bit that I really enjoy doing because you get to travel to new places and you get to really get to know your student. So when you do one to one, as I'm assuming you do online or face to face weekly tuition, there's a little bit of the student you get to know, but really residential when you live with them and you travel with them and you do things with them, you get to know so much more, and it's really fun to see kind of personalities and to do that mentoring aspect as well.
That sounds really cool. I'd love to do that. But we've kind of gone on a little tangent. I want to get back to you, get back to your business. So
Hmm.
you alluded to the Education Hotel.
Yeah.
What's it all about? What is it?
So the Education Hotel is a tuition agency. So we find top tutors for students who are studying either online. We do some face to face in Oxfordshire, which is where I'm based, as well as Northwest London, and we focus specifically on selective schools, on kind of top UK schools and UK universities. So anything educational comes to us, and there's the tuition part of the business, there's a educational advice and placement part of the business, and then there is a kind of mentoring side as well. So three kind of arms to what we do, but all about education and UK education in particular.
Is it mostly online nowadays? You must, so
Oh yeah.
you basically got to have like a big sort of group of tutors, I'm guessing, and
Mhm. Yeah.
and yeah, you get requests and you send them out, like obviously online, and
Give or take a bit. So for mostly we get at the moment it's all online because of COVID restrictions, but we'll get a family who will approach us, and um, we really try and pride ourselves on being really personal. So it's a lot of phoning up the family and making sure exactly what the student wants, sorry, and what specification are they studying, and what type of teacher do they want, and what grades are they aiming for, and then we switch over to doing that tutor placement. And I've got about 70 tutors who work with me, and it's about finding the right person for that right student, because some students want somebody who's going to have a bit of a laugh with them and really help boost their confidence, and other students just want someone who's just going to set them exam papers and mark those papers and tell them where they're going wrong, and just push them to absolutely get those top marks. And those tutors are different, so it's up to me to know who to put in front of the right family, who's going to work, and make sure that relationship works out well. So on days like today, a lot of my time is just spent phoning people. Um, I work in a really, really heavy kind of trust based business. So for us, just getting on the phone and talking to people and saying hi means a lot to parents, especially especially now that we've got COVID and all sorts of things are changing with exams, and we've got GCSEs are changing, A levels are changing, and possibly even uni applications are changing. And so just getting on the phone and saying hi sometimes puts people's mind at ease.
yeah, I mean, I only started tutoring when, like, during COVID.
Hmm.
Bit of a weird time, I suppose, to start. But I mean, yeah, that's when I started. But you're right, like different students require different sort of ways of learning and just like different approaches as well. Like I've got how many students have I got? I've got two, and I've just accepted like another one,
Mhm.
so now I've got three. And yeah, you're right. One of them, you just like he just wants to have a laugh the whole time, and that's just his way of learning, is just like through jokes and just through like funny examples.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like, that's fine. Like if it's the way he learns, and he does learn through that. Like I test him afterwards, and he seems to retain wherever I say, or wherever we kind of joke about. But yeah, it's just opened my eyes really to different ways of learning, really, and I found that really interesting because I learned very much through stories
Yep.
and through stories around examples and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But like, there's so many different ways of learning. You must have found that out as well, right?
I mean, a couple of years ago, I went back and qualified as a teacher, um, and therefore there's a load of teaching pedagogy, and that was actually that point was the point that I decided to launch the Education Hotel. It was a choice for me between full-time teaching or indeed starting a business. But whilst we were doing that teaching, there was a lot about how you can vary your lessons. So whilst somebody whilst one child may enjoy doing questions or may prefer making mind maps or a certain way, there's other ways in which they can learn. So there used to be this old idea of learning styles. Might be something that has been done in school. It's since been debunked, but most of us still keep the idea that you can do. There's so much variety, but not a lot of that variety comes through at school. So one of the big things I love about tutoring is being able to vary the way that people learn. So if you think back, science is my thing. So if I think back to my science lessons, there were some practicals. They were quite fun, but the rest of the time we wrote off the board or we wrote off PowerPoint slides. We filled in some worksheets. We didn't do anything else. And when it came to revision, you rewrote those notes, or there was a very limited amount of things that you did. So going back and qualifying as a teacher and realizing, wait a minute, there's so much more than just look right, cover, check. It's now that if you can make up a song about it or a rap about it, and I teach some students who make up raps about history, which is great. Or you've got a meme, and I've come across again. It's a student who has learned a load of things through memes. So sometimes I find her interesting pictures, and she like draws on the speech bubbles. So just things that make it a little bit more fun, and then it tends to stick in your head a bit more.
I wanted to move away from the learning styles, even though that was extremely interesting, but I really wanted to find out more about Jemma and how she ended up finding herself in the world of entrepreneurialism after having many sort of different roles in the past. I really wanted to find out how she actually ended up starting her own business, and yeah, so we uncover that now.
I suppose I didn't have the traditional business. I don't know if there is a traditional entrepreneur setup, but if there is one, it wasn't me. Um, so I did my undergrad at Oxford Uni, and I studied biochemistry. And I was the first in my family to go to uni. No one had ever been before, and no one can quite work out where the interest in biochemistry came from. But it was something that I was passionate about, and I really loved. And when I went to uni, I wanted to be a forensic scientist or a PhD scientist. And interestingly, working on viruses was the thing that I wanted to do. So that was what I started university thinking. And 3 years in, I decided it probably wasn't for me. And I stayed on to do my master's year, and that confirmed for me that I did not want to be. I didn't want to work in a lab. That was the biggest thing. So I tried. Um, I worked for Procter and Gamble for a little bit. I worked in university labs for a bit. I went and did some audit with KPMG, and I probably enjoyed that more than anything else. So I did the kind of typical go to university job fair, try and see what there is, and decided that consulting was the thing I was going to do. And I applied to a lot of consultancies and thought, oh, I'm going to go really small, because I'd heard there was a lot of horror stories about becoming a consultant and you're going to lose your life, and you're going to work so hard. I thought, oh, well, if I'm in a small one, then maybe that won't happen. And it made no difference exactly. I wish someone had told me that. Yeah, so I started off in a strategy consultancy in London, and yeah, within probably 4 days, I knew it wasn't for me. They actually sat us down at the start, and there was only 5 of us that joined, and they kind of gave us this speech, and I remember them saying that some of you will leave before the end of year one. Some of you will stay to year 3, and some of you will stay beyond. Those are the leaving points, basically. And I was gone by the end of first year, because it was not the job for me. London wasn't the place for me. Um, and just at the end of that, I started tutoring. So I was down in London. I was just about finishing off the first year in consultancy, and I decided that I'd start tutoring. You know, it's a good way to get some money, and with a university degree behind you, and if you know your subject quite well, then you can tutor. And I had this point where it was a bank holiday or something, and I remember working all bank holiday and then going back in to the consultancy, and being like, you know what, I really enjoyed weekend work, and I wasn't here. And I also looked at my bank statement and realized that I'd earned more on the weekend than I had my hourly, if I worked out how long I'd worked hourly in consultancy. I was like, nah, I'm going to be a tutor. So I came back to Oxford, and I didn't have the confidence to start my own business at that point. So I went and worked for other people, and got hired to start a international study centre in Oxford by a summer school. So traditionally they just run 2 week summer schools. They wanted to set up their own year-long thing. Um, and I started just doing courses for them. And then about 2 weeks into that, the guy who was running the centre left, and they kind of turned to me and said, "Will you do it?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" Because I didn't have anything else going on. And I did that for 3 years, and I built that up. And then was the point of the PGCE, the teacher training. And I had a good mentor who was there, who said, "Look, if you want to go into this kind of thing, or you want to run your own business, you probably want to be a qualified teacher, because that's the type of person that a parent's going to trust, in terms of making decisions for their child's education. So apply to teacher training." And that was the same time I got my first residential job in Dubai. So I did my interview for my teacher training whilst I was out in Dubai in the middle of Ramadan. Um, like, I'd prepared by a pool. It was a bit of a surreal experience. And then I flew back to the UK and started teacher training and started the education hotel. So yeah, I came to the end of the teacher training year. I had this choice of, do I go into teaching, or do I go and form this idea that I'd had for probably about 5 years, but I just hadn't acted on it. And I decided that I had some residential tuition lined up, California and Kenya. So I was like, I'm going to delay the decision, and I'm going to give it a go, starting the business. And I haven't looked back. So I'm afraid I have not gone into schools. I am one of those people who did their training year and then decided that school maybe wasn't for me. Um, you never know. One day I may well go back, and do some bits in schools. But for the moment, it's full steam ahead with the education hotel.
That's really interesting. There's like a few different things I really want
Yeah.
to pick up on. The first one was it must have been really scary, like leaving your job at that point, because I mean I've talked to so many entrepreneurs who have had full-time jobs, and there's always a point in their minds. I mean, you talked about it there, where they decide, you know what, this isn't for me anymore. I want to focus on this other thing, which is usually like their business or whatever their project is, or maybe they don't even know what their project is, but they just decide, I know what this just isn't for me. Entrepreneurship is for me. I'm going to leave this now and just kind of find my own way. You've said when that happened, but I'm just interested. What was the sort of like emotion side of things? Like, how did that feel, basically?
Gonna be honest, it was awful. Um, I, as much as I didn't enjoy consultancy, consultancy didn't enjoy me. Um, I am dyslexic and I was diagnosed in uni. And part of my dyslexia means that I really struggle to pick up things like spelling mistakes. I'm not an English tutor, I will say that. But I struggle to pick up spelling mistakes, and I struggle to pick up if if the text is slightly different sizes. I can't really see that kind of stuff. And I was generally creating quite a lot of mistakes on the consultancy slide decks. And those are the decks that you give to clients. And obviously, a consultancy has a very specific way in which they like to present information to clients. And I wasn't meeting the spec. So it was something where I knew I wasn't going to thrive in that, but also I'd I'd kind of done a bit of a different path to the students I graduated with, and all my friends were doing PhDs, and I was the only person who was working. And I'd gone down to London, I'd taken this big step, and then actually I was realizing it just wasn't for me. So actually, it was a really stressful time because I knew I didn't want to be there, but I also knew that they didn't particularly want me there in terms of the work that I was providing. And I had this thing that I thought I enjoyed, but at the same time I didn't feel like was a job. So for me, when I first of all started tutoring, I never really thought of it as a career. A lot of people do it as a stopgap. A lot of people do it because they're doing another job at the same time. Um, and I struggled with the idea of, this could actually be a job. And again, when I left the International Study Centre and looked at starting the Education Hotel fully, again that was a moment of fear, I suppose, because again you're thinking, well, is this running a business thing really a job? Am I actually going to get enough money from it? Am I actually going to be able to support myself to do it? My partner, he's a musician, so it's I am the person that's the main breadwinner. So for me to kind of take that leap of faith, it was quite scary.
One thing as well I really wanted to pick up on was, well, there's two things. One was the confidence side that you mentioned before, how you didn't feel confident with launching a business initially, so you worked for someone else. What got you that confidence? And then like, yeah, basically like how did you gain that confidence to actually launch the business?
So my dad is self-employed. He builds houses, and he always said to make mistakes on someone else's time. So when I was thinking of starting the business, I knew that maybe I thought that I didn't know what I should be doing. So for part of that, it was making mistakes on other people's time. But very quickly, I realized that I could do it, and I started off. Originally we had 2 students who started for the first term, and by the time I left there was 30. So just that being able to oversee everything, and I was incredibly lucky with my bosses at that place in that they gave me complete control. So I had, because these students came and lived with us for 3 months. So I had control over, there was an estates team with an estates manager that I met with. There was the tutor team, and I managed them. There was the advertising kind of arm and the customer service side, which dealt mainly with the summer school, but also dealt a bit with the International Study Centre. And then the team grew and grew as the number of students grew, to the point that I realized that, yeah, I could do this, and this is something that maybe I am okay at, and I can take a look, and I could see where my skills fitted. And I think that gave me confidence to be able to do something that is quite scary, to start your own business. And um, I mean, I because I have a team of 70 odd tutors, and I've got some staff that work part time for me. That whole thing is quite overwhelming sometimes as a business owner. But being able to do that, and being able to have that experience that my bosses gave me at the study centre, it really helped, because it made me realise that maybe that is something that I am good at. I can manage a team.
I really want to pick up on another thing. This is the last thing that I want to pick up on that big sort of segment that you had like a few minutes ago. But I really want to know about like the initial sort of startings of the business, because obviously at the start it must have just been you. So how did that kind of like process work, and how did you get from sort of like when it was just you to actually growing into a team of like 70 odd tutors that you just mentioned? And as well, the growth has been like fairly quick as well, hasn't it? It's been like within the last year, right?
So we fully got the company number and did all of that stuff in September last year. So it's been a big year for us. Um, yeah, I did it a lot on my own at the start, and the the kind of process was, it took a long time at the start, and then once it gets running, it seems to take on a bit of a life of its own. But I remember spending ages doing the first website, ages on it, and then thinking I probably should have hired someone to do this, but I couldn't because I was working on my own. Um, and I remember getting the first client through, first person that we got through, um, that actually came to us on the website and filled out the application form as we had back then, and dealing with them and setting them up, and realizing that that's it now. I'm here. I'm going to do it. Um, and we had some challenges along the way. In that, often when you start up on your own and then you take on a team, um, people only want you because they know who you are. So tuition, like a lot of services business, it runs off of word of mouth. And we'd have people ringing up and saying, "No, I want to speak to Gemma." Um, and sometimes I pretend I was somebody else, because I because A, I wanted to seem like we had a team at the start, and B, I I knew that what they would do is that they would just want to be taught by me if they were speaking to me on the phone. And it's not because I'm the best tutor we have. We've got better tutors, but because the automatic thing is that you want the person on the website that you can see. And when we had a really small team and we were starting to get our first couple of tutors, I was taking a lot of the work on. I'm lucky I do sciences and maths, so that is often what people want for tuition. So I was very lucky. In the first couple of people that we hired were English people, so we had English, maths, and science dealt with. Um, but it was really hard at the start, trying to say, no, no, these tutors are really good. I picked them myself. um, and that was a big issue. That was a problem that we had.
Oh, that's really funny. So, so they were just calling on the phone, like, "Oh, we want Gemma, like
Yeah,
no one else," and you had to
you had
kind
to be
of
like,
sometimes pretend that you
yeah.
you were someone else, and like build that rapport with them as someone else. That's really funny.
And I say, "Oh, I'm the client manager in the office, and I think your tutor would be really good as this person, because I don't do, as I said, I'm dyslexic. I don't do English tuition." And I'd have people ring up, and I'd say to them, I do sciences and maths. I trained as a science teacher, secondary science. I've got this person, and they are a trained English teacher, and they've taught for 15 years, and they'd still be like, "No, I want you." I'm like, "But you don't want me," because I was running all the social media, and I was doing the videos on Facebook. Yeah, and that was the thing. And it was really hard at the start, because we had some great tutors and I really believed in them, but nobody wanted them. And I was saying to my tutors, "Look, I'm trying to get your work, um but at the moment everyone who's phoning up just seems to want me," and that was a problem that we definitely had.
One thing I want to ask you, Gemma, the last thing before we wrap up,
That's fine.
it's actually it's quite a heavy question as well to finish the podcast,
Mhm.
but I'm really interested, so we'll ask it anyway. I know that like when you first started the tutoring business, the education hotel, you must have had in the back of your mind like tutoring companies. There's loads of them out there. There's just
Yep.
so many of them out there.
Yep.
You must have seen that and just like yeah, because I had a friend actually a couple of years ago wanting to start his own tutoring company. Shout out to Firat if he's made it this long. But like, did that not deter you, or did that kind of like spur you even more to like build our USP to compete with them? Like, what was the sort of thought process with that?
I didn't just know of them, I worked for them. That's the thing. And actually, I mean, as an international tutor, so a traveling tutor, there's not that many of us out there. So we do work for a lot of agencies. And there's still a load of agencies that I work with. So I started the education hotel. I think I was on the books of about 10 to 12 big tuition agencies. And nowadays I only work with two that are ones that I really love working with. I have that relationship to. But I knew that they were out there. I knew how they worked. I'd interviewed at them. Some of them I'd even interviewed to work in their offices, because when I finished consultancy, that was what I thought of doing, was working in a tuition agency's office. I'd seen the summer school, I'd seen how it worked, and then there was me. Um, and and in a way there was a couple of people. One person runs and her name's Lucy. I might actually send this to her when it comes out, but she runs a tuition agency that's in a different part of the UK. And she'd started her agency a couple of years beforehand, and I managed to find her, and she's really, really active on social media. And she was a bit of a inspiration, in that when I was starting, she'd only been running a couple of years. And so yeah, watching her do things, and going, okay, well, she's managed to do it, so maybe I can do it. That helped. And um and also just a feeling of, well, if I can do it on my own, and I can make good money doing it on my own, because that was a big worry for me, was that we'd just fall flat on our face, and not be able to earn anything. But I thought, if I can do it on my own, if it all goes horribly wrong, then I can just go back to being on my own. And then I don't have to worry about everybody else. In that I don't have to have yeah, I don't have to do it so big if you don't want to. And actually, we're still quite small in terms of tuition agencies. There's quite a lot of very, very big ones out there. Um, and for us, like, one of the big things I like to do, like, right early on, I said, look, if we're going to be small, which under 100 tutors is small, um, then I'll make sure that we're really personal, and I'll make that being small part of our brand. So that phone call with me or with my client manager, that Christmas card that they're all starting to get sent right now, all of that stuff is part of having a very personable brand, um, which maybe some of the bigger agencies don't have.
Thank you so much, Gemma, for coming on the podcast. It was a really good episode and really good
Having
talking
me.
with you.
Thanks,
How
thanks, Henry.
No, my pleasure. How can people stay in touch with you and stay in touch with the Education Hotel in the future?
I mean, our website is probably the easiest place. So it's www.educationhotel.co.uk. We're on Facebook, Education Hotel. We're on Instagram. I'm on Instagram personally as Top Travel Tutor. It's where I put a lot of my residential stuff. So you can see where I'm going in non-COVID times via that. But we also have a business Instagram, which is just Education Hotel.
Again, thank you so much for coming on, and I hope to see you soon. Take care.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Millennial Entrepreneur. And thank you so much for staying to the very end. I know everyone's very, very busy with a lot of things. And so, yeah, massive thank you for staying to the very end. It really does mean a lot. If you did enjoy, please be sure to leave a written review. And I will give a shout out to the best ones. So, yeah, thank you so much for listening again. And I'll see you in the next episode.